G'day, I'm Chris and this is Flat Tank Journey. Welcome back to the shed. An unproductive week, if I'm honest. I've been waging war with this guard for most of the week, and I did a couple of days work for a mate. This is the front guard off the Wedge tank that I bought brand new, you know, a reproduction piece. And look, it's great, but it's got some roll marks in it. And I've battled to get them out. I used a heavy filler and thought, you know, this is the go, or bog as we'd call it in Australia, or bondo for you Americans, and I'm not sure what the English call it. After the bog, I put a couple of coats of primer putty, I suppose is what we call it. It's a heavy primer. It's meant to fill small spots, and you could still see the lines after I gave it a light sand. So I've got some spot putty, it's called, and it's a fairly lightweight product. It goes on very, very easily, and it sands quite easily. It's not meant for much more than pinholes, tiny depressions. And I feel as though that's what I've got here. Just tiny depressions left by an English wheel, I'm guessing. When you rub it back, you end up with practically nothing left. But when you go to prime it again, you do end up with these lines down the guard. So it's just annoying me a little bit. This is the first coat of spot putty I've put on, and we'll see how it goes. I don't really want to put a million coats of primer putty on. I don't really want to go back to, you know, full coats of bondo, because when I'm sanding it, my hand is obviously going into the depression, and maybe it's more technique of the guy with the sandpaper than it is the ridges in the guards or the bondo or the spot putty. I'm going to have a go at this, do a little bit more, and then I've got some powder coated parts that I want to get out and show you and put some of them back on the BSA. There you go. That doesn't look too bad. I never really know until I get the primer back on it. And weirdly then when the primer's on it, the lumps and the bumps stick out like proverbial, you know, dog's private parts. It's, I'm not trying for it to be perfect, but I do want a pretty reasonable finish on it, especially that front guard from the front of the girder to the peak of the guard. Because that's what everyone sees. The rest of it, well, yes, people look at it, but they don't look at it super closely like that big flat surface will be on the top of the guard. I'm going to get some wax and grease remover, give that a wipe over with a fresh cloth, and then throw some more primer at that and see if that comes up a little bit better. The frustrating stuff about this is wait for the filler to dry, sand it, clean it, paint it, wait for the paint to dry, sand it, fill it, wait for the fill, and it goes on. The TV shows that you see where they fill and paint a car in a day are shot over months and months and months. Don't forget, you're watching this in pretty much real time. You know, I did this a day or two ago, and you're watching the video because I can't keep up because I've got other things to do as well, and it's not a full-time job. So let me get cleaned up and throw some primer at this, and then we'll look at the powder coating parts. They come up pretty well, especially the rear stand. I decided to finish up with this. I'd hit it with 240, wet and dry. I did the whole prep wash thing, the wax and grease remover, and then I threw 3 coats of putty at it, spray putty. I didn't have any primer putty in the one can, so I threw spray putty at it. Now it's come up pretty well. There was a couple of little marks here that I've just given a buff to, and there's still just a couple of tiny low spots. There might be one there too. On the other side, it was actually a little bit worse. And so I've got a high spot here, or in truth, probably a low spot just underneath it. The back of it's not too bad. I'm going to let that harden off for a couple of days now. And then I'm just going to spot putty it again. And then I'm going to sand it. And then I think I'm going to prime it. And I reckon it'll be pretty good to go. The top of the guard looks good. Happy with that because it had a roll mark down the middle. And the edges, I'm almost there. This takes ages. I started this 4 or 5 days ago with filler and primer and sanding and filler and primer. And this would be this will be my 4th go at filler. Now, I'm not a body work person, so this is how I do it. I'm not good at it. I don't do it like they do on the TV where they do it in one go, sand it all off, and it's beautiful. Doesn't work that way for me. This is going to work. Let's get on and have a look at some powder coating though. I'll move the rally off the bike stand and we'll get the wedge tank back in and have a look at that. Rightio. Out of breath. It's a bit of a leg workout pumping up the bike lift. It's old, but it still does the job. Now, the bike, I hate rolling it around on the powder coated rims, but it is what it is. I got more powder coating done and a bit of blasting. So I've got the seat and the hardware from the seat, the rear stand, the stand clip, the pack rack, and the rear guard blasted. So I'm going to get this rear stand on and get it back up. I think you'll be pretty impressed with the stand. It looks pretty good. Come up well. We'll try sitting down to look at this stuff. So here's the seat. Now, they blasted it and powder coated it all as one piece because the front's riveted. It looks pretty good. It actually looks really good, truth be told. You know, considering at the start I didn't think a lot of it, the seats come up well. Now, there is one flaw. When you open it, sorry about hitting the microphone, there's a tiny bit of powder missing. Just in there. And there's a tiny bit missing on the inside underneath where the seat has been hung like that to get the powder to go on. It's of little consequence to me. I just don't think it's worth sweating over. The powder coating guys are great guys. I'm going to touch it up with a tiny bit of enamel paint. I don't pay the world for my powder coating. I wouldn't say it was cheap, but I don't pay the world. And I think they do a good job and they slide in my little bits and pieces. Seat, very, very happy. Little bit of seat hardware that goes on the inside, super. And I just got a clamp, saddle clamp, powder coated. Could have painted it, didn't bother. Right, let's have a look at the pack rack and then we'll get back to the bike and you can have a look at the rear stand because I'm a bit excited. Here's the pack rack. Now, it's the same as the seat. It's got riveted joints. And I don't really want to undo the riveted joints. It just seems a shame. So this is blasted and powder coated really, really well. There's no missing bits. It's patinaed, I suppose. It's got a bit of cellulite or a bit of orange peel maybe in the powder that I think is from rust. So I'm not stressed. I think that looks super. I might bolt it onto the bike for the sake of putting it somewhere while I work on the rear guard. The seat is going to go to the guy who makes seat covers for me because I'd actually like one in leather. You can buy vinyl things and all sorts of things. I know it won't be original, but I'm going to get Daryl to make me one. So that'll be well into the new year. I'm going to put this on the bike. Before I put that pack rack on the bike, I want to show you the rear guard. Now, I don't know whether you'll see it, but it's like it's got orange peel. It's not. This is just primer after it's sandblasted. It's actually rust. The guard's not in super condition. Now, the guy who does the powder coating he's 72, I think. He was a spray painter and a good body worker. his suggestion was to work out a few of the dents with the hammer and then 80 grit the whole thing and then fine fill the whole guard, wiping it across. Perhaps, you know, like you might see the Americans do, who put a skim coat on everything. He said, then sand back. He said, you will be a month of Sundays any other way unless you're prepared to take all the little pit marks. And I'm probably not. But I don't want to drop 400 or 500 into another guard. It would feel silly to do that. So I've got a spot putty that I've been using, and I think that's probably okay for these tiny, like just catch them with your fingernail, pit marks, I suppose we'd call them. You're gonna have to leave me with that for a month or more. If I get it done any quicker, it means I had a really slow Christmas and the weather was all right, and I did it while I wasn't busy. But in the meantime, let's get the carrier back on the bike. So I've got spanners and nuts and bolts absolutely everywhere from the rally. So truth time with the rally, I haven't done anything since I was chasing a socket for the clutch, and I haven't found that socket yet. I hope I don't have to buy anything. I didn't look super hard. I went to my other shed, picked up some parts and forgot about it. Take that out of my mouth. And forgot about it, if I'm honest. And was a little bit miffed when I got home and thought, oh, didn't do that. I'll be back at the other shed in the coming weeks and I will find it then. This is a little bit difficult. You've got to line up all 4 holes in all 4 pieces to get it right. There's 2. There's 4. And that will nip up there. I think I've got the carrier on the right way. Now it is cheating a little bit getting powder coating done, or I always feel as though it is. I've cheated a little bit. I didn't do that labour myself. I took it to someone else and got them to do it. I can live with it. I paid well for it. What you get though is a super nice finish. And you know, that's starting to look really, really good. Here's the rear stand clip. The rear stand clip just goes back together like that, I think, and I've got hardware for that. Gonna have to put that aside because again, I can't put it back on until I put the guard on. Well, as I say, I always find that powder coating gives you an instant gratification. Have a look at the rear stand. Now I'm a bit shaky in the hands today, but there it is. It looks glassy. It's come up super well. Super happy with where it sits up into the frame. The finish from the milling is really good. Even my welding doesn't look too bad. Pretty pleased. The back rack, well, as you might imagine, standing up, the pack rack is good. I don't think you'll see, you may, the little imperfections. Well, they're probably pit marks, truthfully. They're not imperfections in the powder. The powder's pretty flawless. But you can see the powder coating has gone into all the joins. It looks really good. I couldn't paint it for the price. They blasted it and powdered it. And I'm going to end up with, you know, a nice durable finish. It's always going to look okay and it's going to feel pretty good. Haven't made a lot of progress, but progress nonetheless. Well, that's 80 grit, and the 80 grit is taking the top off it. Sorry, I'll start again. That's 80 grit, and the 80 grit is taking the top off it. I suppose every time you paint and sand, you're taking the top off and leaving the low spots. So it's not doing any harm. I'll continue on, then I'll dry it out, and then look at some filler. I've given that a solid sand, taken most of the gloss off it. Amazing how hard that primer is. Amazing. I'm not even sure what it is, but heavens, it's hard. I've only worn through in a few places, and I've used 2 sheets of 80 grit wet and dry and sanded that pretty hard. I have got a sore hand. I have hurt my hand, but I feel pretty good about it. Spot putty? Definitely. If you're a panel beater or a body worker, can you not crucify the life out of me for this? I'm not a body worker, not a panel beater. I think I've told you this before. I'm an embalmer and a funeral director. So bear with me. Now, I have no expectation that this is a one and done coat. None. I expect to put this on. Even just putting it on, I expect to put it on in perhaps 2 or 3 goes, letting one side of it and the middle dry before I attempt the other side. Now this, I call it spot putty. That's what it's called, spot putty. It's got lots of names, glazing putty, whole range of things, but that's what this one's called. It's a bit like putting baby's excrement onto something. Not a pleasant job. Not too bad. Not too bad. Now, I might have said before, this stuff goes off really quite quickly and you can come back and work on the other side. I'm going to leave it alone for a couple of hours perhaps and come back to it. Anyway, there it is. That's what I've done. So I've wiped a spot putty, a glazing putty, a body working product over the top. And I did that on the advice of someone who might know, because I don't. I don't really want to pay someone to do it for me, because I think the costs would just blow to pieces. You'd spend, 5 or 6 hours on that, and it'd cost you $1,000 to get it painted. Not worth it. I'll punish myself with sandpaper and various other bits and pieces. You shouldn't touch it when it's half dry, but you see a big lump, and then you want to pull the big lump off, because you're going to have to sand that later. I'm going to mess around with this and bring you back in another episode. So there you go. That's it. It hasn't been a huge week for me. This is about a 2-week turnaround on blasting and powder coating in my town. So you've got to wait for that. I get distracted by the rally last week. Now I'm distracted by paint. This paint process is probably going to take a long time, perhaps even into the new year before we start throwing colour at anything. Don't know. We'll see how it goes. In the meantime, hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, give us a shout out, say g'day. Enjoy the run into Christmas. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't, will you? About half of you don't subscribe. If you can, hit the subscribe button or say g'day. Cheers. Have a good one.